Pitch black ocean. One rig, blazing like a city floating on nothing. What nobody knew at the time was that these men had already chosen something most people never could. But the 12-hour shift isn't punishment. It's the architecture of survival. Oil doesn't wait. Offshore rigs run every single hour of every day, and every one of those hours must be covered. Two 12-hour shifts creates a mathematically clean split. Day crew takes over from night crew takes over from day crew. The machine never stops. Neither does the responsibility. But this story doesn't start with the 12-hour shift itself. It starts with the fundamental economics of keeping a human being alive in the middle of the ocean. Getting a worker to an offshore rig involves helicopter transport, safety induction briefings, accommodation preparation, catering logistics, and emergency protocol updates. Every person who steps onto that helideck triggers a cascade of costs before they've even picked up a tool. Now run the numbers on what 3 separate crews would require. If rigs operated on 8-hour shifts, you'd need 3 distinct crews rotating through every 24-hour period instead of 2. That's not a minor operational adjustment. That's a structural cost explosion the offshore petroleum industry has consistently refused to absorb. Fewer crew rotations mean fewer helicopter flights, fewer induction cycles, fewer beds in use, and fewer meals to prepare. That's not a typo, by the way. Cutting from 3 rotations to 2 genuinely halves the transport burden while maintaining complete 24/7 coverage. Major operators across the North Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, and the waters off Southeast Asia have all converged on the same answer independently. 12 hours is the documented global norm in offshore petroleum operations. But the industry wasn't done yet. Not even close. Workers themselves actively prefer 12-hour shifts. When your time off is genuinely, completely, unconditionally yours, the calculus of sacrifice changes entirely. Offshore workers don't get half days. They get full weeks of freedom. And they've decided that 12 concentrated hours of work per day is the price worth paying. That preference created a feedback loop that cemented the 12-hour standard even further. Operators found it easier to retain experienced crews. Experienced crews built deep working knowledge of specific rigs. That institutional knowledge became a safety asset no shorter rotation could replicate. The 2-crew model concentrates expertise. It builds familiarity. It creates the operational fluency that keeps a rig running safely through a storm at 3 in the morning. The assumption that longer shifts automatically mean more fatigue was a warning sign. The industry ignored it. Everything the 12-hour model had built was about to work against them. A shift on an offshore rig doesn't begin when you walk out the door. It begins 15 minutes before your predecessor gets to leave. The handover briefing is one of the most critical moments in any 12-hour cycle. The outgoing crew doesn't just clock out. They transfer a living picture of the rig's current state. Active pressures, equipment anomalies, any near misses from the previous hours, valve positions, ongoing maintenance tasks, and the mood of the machinery itself. 15 minutes to absorb everything that happened in the last 12. Miss something in that window, and you're starting your shift blind. The first 4 hours after handover are where the heaviest work lives. The human body is at peak alertness in the early portion of a shift, and experienced supervisors know to schedule the most demanding physical and technical tasks during this window. Drilling operations requiring precise pressure management, equipment inspections in confined spaces, heavy lifting, all of it front-loaded into the hours when the brain is sharpest and the body is freshest. This isn't accidental scheduling. It's deliberate fatigue management built into the architecture of the day. Somewhere around the midpoint, a structured meal break interrupts the rhythm. On a rig, food isn't a luxury. It's a physiological necessity that operators take seriously. The galley runs hot meals around the clock, and the meal break is a non-negotiable slot in the schedule. Calories sustain concentration. A worker who skips a meal in hour 6 is a worker making worse decisions in hour 10. Hours 8 through 12 are where the shift reveals its real challenge. Fatigue accumulates regardless of fitness or experience. The body's energy systems begin to flag, and the mind starts reaching for shortcuts. This is where the rig's vigilance protocols activate. Buddy checks become mandatory. Communication requirements increase. Supervisors specifically increase their presence on the floor during the final stretch, because they know what fatigue does to human judgment. And then, the cycle closes where it began. The final handover. The outgoing worker must be coherent, specific, and accurate enough to brief the incoming crew on everything that matters. A garbled or incomplete handover is a gift-wrapped hazard delivered directly to the next shift. Every minute of those 12 hours leads to this single moment of transfer, and it demands full presence right up until the last second. There is a war happening inside every offshore worker's body. It runs silently, invisibly, and it never takes a rotation off. The human circadian rhythm is a 24-hour biological clock that regulates sleep, alertness, hormone release, body temperature, and cognitive function. It evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to align with sunlight. It did not evolve to accommodate 12-hour night shifts on a steel platform surrounded by the North Atlantic. When a worker rotates onto night shifts, their circadian clock doesn't simply adjust, it resists, hard. The consequences of that resistance are measurable and documented. Disrupted circadian rhythms reduce vigilance, slow reaction time, and impair the kind of complex decision-making that offshore environments demand constantly. A worker whose body clock is fighting their shift schedule is operating with a cognitive handicap they may not even be able to perceive. That's the insidious part. Fatigue doesn't always feel like fatigue. Sometimes it feels like clarity, right up until the moment a critical error reveals otherwise. But here's the detail that everyone missed at the time. Night shift workers on offshore rigs face a specific compounding problem. Not only are they working against their circadian rhythm, but the absence of natural light cues on a rig makes it significantly harder for the body to recalibrate. On land, even a brief exposure to morning sunlight helps anchor the biological clock. On a rig, surrounded by artificial lighting at all hours, that anchor is gone. The body drifts. The offshore industry has known about fatigue-related risk for decades. Investigations into offshore incidents repeatedly surface fatigue as a contributing factor. In response, operators have built countermeasures directly into the rotation structure. Mandatory rest periods between shifts are enforced, not suggested. Sleep quality monitoring programs exist on some installations. Meal timing is structured to support circadian alignment as much as possible, with warm meals available at the start of night shifts to help workers signal to their bodies that a new cycle is beginning. These aren't wellness perks. They are operational safety tools designed to keep a fatigued human being functional enough to avoid catastrophic error during the hardest hours of the night. The body keeps score on every rotation, and the workers who last longest out there are the ones who learn to work with that reality rather than against it. Imagine working the hardest 14 days of your life and then walking away completely free for the next 14. No emails, no on-call phone, no obligation to anyone except yourself. That is the rotation deal, and it is the single most powerful psychological mechanism keeping experienced workers on offshore rigs around the world. The standard rotation runs on a 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off cycle, though some operations extend this to 3 weeks on, followed by 3 weeks off, depending on location and operator. During the on period, the worker belongs entirely to the rig. During the off period, the rig has absolutely no claim on them whatsoever. If the offshore worker had stopped here, this would be a very different story. But the rotation doesn't just give workers time off. It gives them a fundamentally different relationship with time itself. A 9-to-5 worker earns 2 days of freedom per week, fragmented, often invaded by errands and the low-grade anxiety of Monday approaching. An offshore worker earns 14 consecutive days of complete freedom, arriving in a single, uninterrupted block. The psychological difference between those two experiences is enormous. Workers who have lived inside this rotation describe the off period in terms that most office workers would find difficult to imagine. Full presence with family, travel that doesn't feel rushed, hobbies pursued with actual depth rather than stolen weekend hours. Many describe it directly as better than any weekend a standard job could ever offer. And they mean it without exaggeration, because they've experienced both sides of that comparison. The rotation is the psychological engine that sustains the entire offshore workforce. The sacrifice is enormous, but it is finite, visible, and bounded. The worker knows exactly when it ends. That knowledge transforms hardship from open-ended suffering into a defined sprint with a guaranteed reward at the finish line. That distinction, finite versus indefinite sacrifice, is what separates a job people endure from a life they actively choose. The cabin is small, maybe the size of a generous walk-in closet, but it has one thing that makes it worth more than it looks: a door that closes. Sleep on an offshore rig is treated as an operational asset, not a personal luxury. Cabins are designed with one primary function in mind, which is to give a human being the best possible chance of genuine rest in an environment that was not built for sleeping. Blackout curtains are standard issue for day sleepers, because the worker coming off a night shift needs to sleep while the sun is at full height and the rest of the rig is running at peak activity. The noise is constant. Machinery hum, ocean movement against the hull, ventilation systems cycling through the structure, the distant percussion of drilling operations. All of it bleeds through walls and into the cabin. Workers either adapt to this ambient soundscape within their first few rotations, or they don't survive long enough to become experienced offshore hands. Sleeping during daylight hours while your circadian clock insists it's time to be awake is genuinely one of the hardest physical challenges of offshore work. Research consistently shows that workers struggle most with sleep quality at the very start and end of each rotation. The transition periods when the body is either adjusting to the rig's schedule or beginning to anticipate the return to shore life. Experienced workers develop personal sleep rituals that become non-negotiable. Earplugs in a specific brand they've tested across multiple rotations. A particular sleep mask that blocks light completely. Melatonin timed precisely to the start of the sleep window. These aren't preferences. They are survival tools refined through hard experience. That specific ritual, the one that finally made sleep possible on a moving rig, would come back to haunt every worker who abandoned it even once. But that's getting ahead of the story. Let's be precise about what offshore workers are actually risking every time they step onto that helideck. The documented hazard profile of offshore petroleum work is not abstract. Drowning. Toxic chemical exposure from hydrogen sulfide and other process gases. Severe burns from flash fires and blowouts. Electrocution from high-voltage electrical systems running throughout the installation. Helicopter crashes during transit over open water, which remain one of the leading causes of offshore fatalities globally. These are not edge cases. They are the cataloged, investigated, statistically documented causes of death and serious injury in this industry. And this is the part where things stopped being funny. Beyond the acute hazards, offshore work delivers a slower category of damage that builds invisibly across rotations. Heavy lifting, repetitive motion in confined spaces, vibration exposure from machinery. All of it accumulates in the musculoskeletal system over years of service. Workers who have spent a decade offshore often carry chronic back injuries, joint damage, and nerve compression that they manage quietly as the price of their career. What makes the hazard profile of offshore work uniquely dangerous is the compounding effect of isolation. The rig is miles from any hospital. When a serious injury occurs, emergency response time is measured in hours, not minutes. A worker who suffers a cardiac event, a severe burn, or a crush injury cannot expect a paramedic to arrive in 8 minutes. They can expect a medical officer on site, a stabilization effort, and then a helicopter flight to shore that itself carries its own risk. High pay in this industry is not a bonus. It is not a reward for being adventurous. It is direct financial compensation for the reality that every single shift carries a genuine, measurable probability of serious injury or death. The workers know this. The operators know this. The pay scale reflects it. The number on an offshore worker's paycheck is not an accident. It is a precise calculation of what their presence in that environment is actually worth. Offshore salaries are substantially higher than equivalent onshore roles across every skill category. A driller, an engineer, a medic, a crane operator, all of them earn a significant hazard premium above what their land-based counterparts take home. That premium is not negotiated generously by operators out of goodwill. It is the market's answer to a simple question: what does it cost to get a qualified human being to voluntarily spend 2 weeks on a steel platform in the middle of the ocean? The financial structure of offshore work amplifies the earning advantage further. Workers are paid for every hour they are on the rig. There is no unpaid lunch break. There is no commute time absorbed as a personal cost. Every hour the rig has your body, it is paying for that hour. Accommodation is provided. All meals are covered. Transport to and from the installation is an operator expense. The result is that take-home pay from an offshore rotation arrives almost entirely intact as savings potential, with virtually no daily living costs to offset it. 2 weeks of offshore earnings can match or exceed what many workers in equivalent onshore roles earn across a full calendar month. For workers coming from smaller regional economies, from towns where well-paying skilled work is scarce, or from developing regions where the offshore premium represents a genuine multiple of local wages, this isn't just attractive compensation. It is a transformative financial opportunity that can change the trajectory of an entire family's circumstances within a single rotation cycle. The sacrifice is real, the danger is real, and the pay is designed to reflect both of those realities without apology. 2 weeks in an isolated environment with the same group of people, under constant physical pressure, with shared meals and shared risk, does something to human relationships that years of office proximity never achieves. Offshore crews bond fast, and they bond deep. The shared hardship of 12-hour shifts, the physical isolation, the genuine danger that everyone on the rig understands without needing to discuss it. All of it accelerates the formation of trust and loyalty between crew members. Workers who have rotated together for multiple hitches describe relationships that feel closer than most of their onshore friendships, built in a fraction of the time. And the timing of what happened next? Almost too perfect. Because just as those bonds form, the rotation ends, and the crew disperses back to their separate lives on shore, only to reconvene and rebuild the same dynamic 2 weeks later with remarkable speed. The 12-hour shift provides something that isolated environments desperately need: rigid structure. When you are cut off from the rhythms of normal life, a predictable schedule becomes psychologically protective. The shift starts, the shift ends. Meals happen at defined times. The day has shape. I mean, think about that for a second. That shape is not incidental. It is a mental health tool built into the operational architecture of the rig. The galley functions as far more than a food service operation. It is the emotional center of rig life. Mealtimes are when crews from different departments converge, when stories move between teams, when the social fabric of the installation is actively maintained. Experienced workers mentor newer crew members during shift hours, passing down the specific knowledge of that particular rig, its quirks, its pressure tendencies, its mechanical personality. That knowledge transfer is not a formal training program. It happens in the flow of the work itself. Many workers, when they return to shore after a long rotation, describe missing the rig. Not the danger, not the discomfort, but the clarity, the structure, the brotherhood, and the sense that every hour had genuine weight and consequence. The same structure that defined every hour of their working life on the rig was about to destroy it. Somewhere out there right now, a shift is starting, and someone just chose to show up. What the ocean demands, only the willing survive. That video is on screen now.